I would venture to say most Americans do not care about a trucker convoy in Canada any more than a lot of you care about the Joe Rogan story. I've had a number of people email and say, I just don't care. Can you move on from it? It's a big story, but I get people don't care. And I don't think a lot of people care about this, but there are things that I think you should think about whether you care about the trucker convoy situation or not. First of all, it is thousands of truckers, and it has had such an impact that Alberta, which a lot of people say is the Texas of Canada, the Calgary region in that area, very oil-producing, cowboys and the like, although much more left-leaning economically than Texas will ever be. They're getting rid of all their vaccine mandates and mask requirements at this time. What the truckers are doing is they've gone to Ottawa. Many of them are blocking the streets. They've actually are blocking one of the biggest bridges into the United States, shutting down trade between the U.S. and Canada in protest. They're trying to hijack the Canadian economy. They are livid. Now, they're livid because something like 85 to 90% of truckers in Canada are vaccinated, but the government has decided to take the jobs away from those 10% who won't, and the Canadian truckers are already overworked, and they don't want that capacity to go, and they've had enough. They've had enough of the draconian regulations. They've had enough of the things that are causing their business to slow down. They've had enough of the impact on their business, and they finally decided to rise up and protest. What is fascinating to me is that Justin Trudeau was all about the Black Lives Matters protests in the United States. It took him about 20 seconds when someone asked him to respond to Donald Trump's criticisms of Black Lives Matters, and he nearly cried before he could offer his words of support for Black Lives Matters, an organization that was allowing people to rampage through American cities, burning those cities to the ground in fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Back in 2010, Rick Santelli on CNBC. Well, I know it was 2009. He was furious about some of Barack Obama's tax increase proposals and spending proposals and his health care plan. And he said there was going to be a rise of people in the United States. It was going to be like a second Tea Party. And it provoked the Tea Party movement in the United States, of which I was a part. I was running redstate.com at the time, had not yet gotten into radio, was just about to get offered a job at CNN, and was asked to speak all over the country at Tea Party rallies. I went to Colorado, went to Texas, I went to Pittsburgh, went all over Georgia, went to Florida and South Carolina. Ultimately wound up introducing Nikki Haley and Sarah Palin in 2010 on the steps of the South Carolina State Capitol as Sarah Palin was endorsing Nikki Haley for governor there. Got to become friends with people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, Jim DeMint. And one of the things that happened around the country is a small malcontented group of people would show up, oftentimes with swastikas or sympathies to the KKK or racist signs, and the media would overwhelmingly give them attention as if there were no black people there. I never went to a Tea Party rally where there were not black people there who were endorsing the Tea Party movement and calling for an end of Obamacare and for the Democrats to shut it down. They never got on TV. The racists got on TV as if they were the embodiment of the Tea Party movement. And I remember when I got to CNN, and I pointed this out, there was they were appalled, they were aghast that I would be on their television network telling them that they were willfully miscasting the Tea Party activists as racists. When there was a small group of malcontents, they show up at every protest, and yet CNN and these other networks were going out of their way to cover the guys with the swastikas and ignore everybody else. It was predictable. At one rally, I know of a group, and I believe it was MSNBC. I had three people I know. I wouldn't call them friends, but I know these three guys. And they dressed up as if they were Confederates. And they stood off to the side. And they knew the reporters and the camera crew would come over. And when the reporters and the camera crew came over and started asking them about the Tea Party movement and why they were there and the racism and all that, they said, actually, we dressed up this way because we knew you would come focus on us and you would ignore everyone else. Why are you ignoring all of these people here? Why are you ignoring the black couple over there? Why are you ignoring the Asian and Hispanic couple over there? And the news, they were incensed. The reporters were furious with these guys. But they knew it was going to happen. It was that obvious the media was going to do that. And now they're doing it to the truckers in Canada. How many of you have heard the story that a 78-year-old grandfather in Canada, in Ottawa, honked his car horn in support of the truckers, and the police dragged him out of his car, put him in handcuffs, and shoved him in the back of a police car? That happened. How many of you knew that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has said he's going to take the children from the protesters? He will take their children from their homes to punish the protesters. Did you know that? Has the media covered that? Because it's happened. It's not just how the media covers something that indicates their biases. It's also what they don't cover. They're not really covering those stories, but they're all documented for you to find. They're actually happening. When the small business owners of America decided to protest to reopen their businesses in 2020, the media excoriated them. You had, what's her name, Yamiche Alcindor, I believe it was her, now PBS was White House correspondent, suggested on Twitter that if any of them get COVID, they need to not be given a ventilator so that ventilators can go to the responsible people who masked up and didn't protest. They were vilified by the press. When Governor Brian Kemp reopened the state of Georgia, The Atlantic ran a story that he was experimenting in human sacrifice to get the economy going. They never apologized. And then when the George Floyd riots happened, and people were in the streets burning down businesses, smashing windows, spreading COVID without their masks on, the media said, well, this is far more important than masking. This is about civil rights. This is a good protest. Pay no attention to the violence. It's fiery, but mostly peaceful. Is it any wonder people don't respect the media? Parents showing up at school boards were painted as racist by the press, vilified by members of the press. Small business owners were, and now the truckers are, just like the Tea Party was back in the day. The media loves a good riot and protest as long as it's left-wingers doing it. But these people who actually want to get their businesses up and going again, these people who are worried about the collapse of their small business, the media treats them like garbage. Across the United States and now Canada. And in Canada, you've got an authoritarian pretty boy as prime minister who couldn't care less about the needs of small businesses. He's too busy running around in blackface and a turban to pay attention to any of it, but yet uses the press to vilify these guys who just want to go back to normal. And now these people are actually turning the tide in Canada. Polling in Canada shows overwhelmingly there's been a rapid shift of the public ready to go back to normal and reopen Canada, and noting that the science has changed and Justin Trudeau's government is not. These truckers aren't there to be praised. They will be vilified. But I think history will remember that this was a turning point in Canada's COVID regime, and these guys are the heroes, not the villains. Even as some bad people showed up with some flags none of us like, they were the minority, not the majority. Even as the press paraded them around as if they were the majority, they weren't. They were the minority. The majority of people there were peace-loving, good Canadians who just want to go back to normal now, like every other country is doing, except for, well, the United States.